Hey everybody, Tyler here. This video on Jean-Luc Godard's Breathless will be an experiment in a new interactive video essay format. So you can expand upon the information and references in this video by clicking these buttons, which will pause this video and open a new window. These buttons will only expand on the information, so if you do not wish to click them, or if you're on a mobile device, no worries. The video will play through like normal. Let's get started. Breathless was Jean-Luc Godard's first feature film and premiered in 1960. Alongside Francois Truffaut's The 400 Blows and Alain René's Hiroshima Mon Amour, both released a year earlier, Breathless is credited as starting the French New Wave movement of the 1960s. The French New Wave marked a change in production by rejecting the practices of the normal films churned out by the studio system and instead favoring new modes of production based around experimentation and the rethinking of film form. This included favoring real locations over constructed sets and sound stages, available resources over big budgets, lightweight cameras and small crews over large productions, and pretty much breaking all the conventions considered at this point to be the rules of proper filmmaking. Breathless is one of the most influential movies ever made, making popular several concepts that are still used today and inspiring a vast array of filmmakers and their films. This includes Pulp Fiction, My Own Private Idaho, and Bonnie and Clyde, to name a few. And Godard was actually approached to direct Bonnie and Clyde, but was passed over by the producers after he planned to set the film in Japan with Bonnie and Clyde as teenagers. The story for Breathless was written by Francois Truffaut and Claude Chabrol, who gave it to Godard after they decided not to make it. Godard had only made a few shorts at this point and was unknown as a filmmaker. So Truffaut and Chabrol wrote to the producer while at Cannes, where Truffaut had just won the Best Director award, and told him that they would work on the film so that Godard would be allowed to direct. However, Godard's changes to the story apparently made it very different than the original treatment. Godard actually made up a lot of the dialogue as he shot. It was a philosophy of his to try and capture real, spontaneous moments. All the dialogue was dubbed because the camera was too loud, and Godard was usually feeding the actors lines from behind the camera. This philosophy inspired the unique documentary style of the cinematography. It was shot almost entirely handheld using only available light.
Quand on a tourné à bout de souffle, l'idée était de dire c'est un reportage qui est fait comme se faisait un reportage à l'époque, c'est-à-dire donc la caméra à l'épaule et pas de lumière. Donc pour moi, je veux dire, c'était pratiquement la même chose que si j'avais fait un reportage dans une unité combattante. Bon, c'était, ça représentait pas un risque réel.
It should be noted that Robert Drew's Primary and Jean Rouche's Chronicle of a Summer, two major films at the forefront of the direct cinema and cinema verite movements respectively, both came out around the same time as Breathless. Hollywood adopted the documentary style, a style invented to better capture truth, and instead used it as a tool to make fiction seem more real. Contemporary Hollywood sort of ran with it after its brilliant use in Steven Spielberg's 1998 war film, Saving Private Ryan. This style, once used to manipulate a sense of reality into the minds of an audience well-versed in fly-on-the-wall documentaries, field journalism, and amateur home video, has now been transformed into a device used to try and heighten suspense by giving a sense of a physical presence to the cameras and therefore the audience's point of view. Some of the best applications of this style occurred during the Hollywood Renaissance.
I would literally rehearse a scene with the actors without the camera crew in the room. I would tell the director of photography who does the lighting, I'd say, well, they're going to be roughly in this area over here, and roughly. So what do you mean roughly? I said, we might go here, you might, I don't know what they're, just let's light the set from here to there.
So what can we learn? First, there are no rules in art. The rules that are established for filmmaking stem from figuring out what works well in conveying a specific concept to an audience. Nevertheless, we seem to have reached a point in cinema where a suggested approach to a cinematic concept has been mistaken for a rule. This isn't to say that experimentation doesn't sometimes fail miserably, but there's certainly an aversion to trying new and offbeat techniques. It makes sense that with an extremely large amount of money on the line, a production might not want to risk a new approach when an older one has worked many times in the past. A film like Breathless was able to change and influence what is acceptable in film from its experimentation, which is most likely due to its shoestring budget. It also helps that Godard is an unabashed renegade.
Quelles sont les choses contre lesquelles vous rebellez particulièrement?
À se rebeller, non, c'est-à-dire que je trouve c'est embêtant de ne pas pouvoir faire exactement ce qu'on a envie de faire. Là, pour le petit soldat, c'est ennuyeux d'être obligé d'aller tourner à l'étranger un film que j'aurais voulu tourner en France, mais qui n'était pas possible de tourner en France dans les conditions actuelles. Du reste, le cinéma influence la jeunesse qu'il faut essayer, c'est que ça soit plutôt la jeunesse qui influence le cinéma, c'est-à-dire de rester plein d'envie. Enfin, ce qui me surprend.
Perhaps the technique that Breathless is most known for is its use of jump cuts, where pieces will be cut out of single shots, making it appear that the shot is jumping in time. Godard got the idea from Jean Rousseau's use of jump cuts in his 1958 ethno-fiction film titled Moi un Noir, or Me a Black, a film following Nigerian immigrants living on the Ivory Coast. Godard was a huge fan of Moi un Noir, and the film is credited as being highly influential to the French New Wave movement. Godard, however, provided his own take on the jump cut technique. In Breathless, these cuts give the scene a jagged and edgy rhythm, but this technique was not planned from the beginning. Rather, the film was too long, most likely due to the scenes being frequently improvised, and instead of cutting full scenes out of the picture, Godard chose to cut pieces out of the middle of single shots. This caused the scenes to sometimes skip from moment to moment, and thus shorten the runtime of the film. This technique is often seen today in video blogs, and is usually used to forcibly construct or sustain a pace by removing pauses or errors. With all this in mind, it is important to have a reason for experimentation. The established techniques are there because they were born out of experimentation themselves, and affect the audience in the intended way. But experimentation in this case is essentially problem solving. Never stop thinking of new and better ways to get your ideas across. Number 2. Seriously, there are no rules. Godard was heavily influenced by the theater director and playwright Bertolt Brecht. Brecht prevented the audience from becoming wrapped up in the story by constantly reminding them that they are watching a constructed work of fiction. He would emphasize to the audience that they were not viewing reality, but rather something made to resemble reality. Godard applied this to his films by calling attention to things that were meant to be invisible in classic filmmaking. These included editing techniques like the jump cut, characters looking at the camera or talking directly to the audience, and in its films following Breathless, the abrupt starting and stopping of music.
To do it throws us out of the movie so that we're thinking about the movie, so that we're watching these characters along with Godard, knowing that they're fictional characters at the same time that we realize that they express things about the world we actually live in. Godard was very strongly influenced by the great German playwright Bertolt Brecht, who wanted to accomplish exactly that, who wanted people not to be absorbed in the story in a psychological way, wanted people to be thinking about the story in an intellectual way. That way you can have a dialogue with the work of art. You can think about the world that produced that work of art and whether you might want to change that world.
The main character, Michel, is on the run from the police, and in this scene, this man, played by Godard himself, recognizes Michel from the newspaper and alerts the police. I just love the idea of a director having a physical effect on the plot from within the diegesis of the film. Number 3. Make use of what you have. A major tenet of the French New Wave movement is being resourceful. These films had very little budget to work with, so directors would often only shoot in places they already had access to, with whatever equipment they had access to, and using people they knew as crew. Before Breathless and the French New Wave, movies were shot mainly in sound stages with constructed sets and specialized lighting. Breathless was filmed on the streets of Paris without permits or permission. Often, dolly shots would be created by having cinematographer Raoul Cottard sit in a wheelchair and be pushed through the scene. It proved that the ability to make a movie was not limited to just those with money. Today, this philosophy has never been more valid. Not only does pretty much everyone have access to a camera, but we carry a camera around in our pockets at all times. In Godard's most recent film from 2014, titled Goodbye to Language, he shot on small consumer 3D cameras and a Canon 5D that Canon loaned him for the movie. Number 4. Study film. And this one's kind of weird because this is actually what we're doing right now, but Godard, Truffaut, and other French New Wave proponents actually started out as critics writing for the film magazine Cahiers du Cinéma before making films of their own. Their critiques and discussions helped them discover what makes a movie good and contemplate the very nature of film form. Godard, a film lover, peppered Breathless with many references to films and genres. Michel's Bogart obsession, the movie posters on the wall, and the overly dramatic music are all nods to Hollywood. The French New Wave was about cinema being made by cinephiles. Movies like Breathless are what gave rise to auteur theory, and therefore, the best that cinema has to offer. Thanks for watching. Feel free to let me know if you enjoyed the interactivity of this video. Did it make the experience better? Was it too distracting? If you have any suggestions, I'd love to hear them. And if you're new here, please hit that subscribe button now because there are plenty of new videos on the way for cinephiles like you. Thanks again for watching.